Welcome back to Hot Flashes and Cool Topics. Today we have on Dr. Doris Day. Now, Dr. Day was at our event in New York City, and one of the things that I loved about our conversation was that we talked about skin longevity. And for a lot of women, that's more important than what procedures they may or may not be getting. So we would love to welcome you to the show, Dr. Day.
It's so good to be back. The event was amazing. I loved all the speakers. I learned so much, and it was really great to see the enthusiasm in the room. Everybody wanted the information that was there, and just the camaraderie, the networking. It was really a beautiful event. I was so honored to be included.
Well, it was a magical day. That's, it's great. Afterwards, we always hear from attendees, the day was just magical. It was, that's the word that keeps popping up. And we truly appreciate your time with that. And I was going to start one place, but you and I and Bridget started talking before we pressed record. And you were talking about the fact that doctors need to be cheerleaders for their patients. So I wanted to start there. What do you mean by that? And why is it so important?
Well, I think it's one of the most important things we do as doctors is cheerlead our patients' health and look at what they have that's good. Like I always say, if I look at my patients and I go, oh, all these things are wrong, I'm going to take them from more wrong to less wrong. But everybody has beauty. Everybody has good aspects of their health. Okay, if your cholesterol is a little bit high or you have a wrinkle, all those things are there. But you have energy, you have strength. You got up this morning, you showed up today. All of those things are things that we want to celebrate in our patients and encourage them more of that. Like we want more of this good health. We want to take what we love about what you're doing for yourself, what your genetics bring, and then say, this is what we're going to build on it to optimize your health and give you the greatest chance of having the best longevity, the best health span, so that every day of your life you can reach the goals that you want to reach. But unfortunately, so much of medicine has become medicine where we just look at labs, look at data, look at problems, and then try to give you something to solve the problem instead of saying that life is good today. And I always say we're all just going to die of a side effect, because every drug has a side effect. And for every side effect, there's a drug. And before you know it, you're just on this roller coaster of medicines. But I want to optimize health. And that's what longevity is. And longevity beauty is a step towards that, because we now know that your skin isn't just reflecting your health, it's affecting your health as well. And when you have beautiful, healthy skin, it's making your other organs healthier, and it's also reflecting the health of the rest of your body.
Yeah, I was at the event and I really enjoyed your panel and I really enjoyed your talk. And the first thing I noticed just about you was, look at her. She looks like a real person. She looks beautiful. Her skin looks great. She doesn't look fake. And everything in there looked real, but looked beautiful, embracing. I mean, it really did. Here I am, but it really did. And that just had, I don't know, I felt some trust there. I felt like if I lived in New York City,
move my face.
yes. And that is something I follow your Instagram. And that is something, that you've really talked about that. Can you talk a little bit about that, about just keeping some things there that you can move for your face? You don't want to freeze your forehead.
Right.
How that you just really look authentic.
Well, that's so sweet. And thank you. I'll always accept the compliment and say thank you. My philosophy is never to point out my own flaws. So I'll just say thank you. But what I've tried to understand why we have this obsession with erasing all movement. And I think it really comes from the way the FDA trials are done. So when Botox or Xeomin or any of the neuromodulators go for the FDA approval, we create scales. So let's say we're doing between the eyes, the glabella. So it's easy. You have a scale. No movement is 0 to extreme movement is a 4 or a 5 on a scale. If you want an FDA approval, you want to take the ones who are at moderate to severe movement and take them down to mild or none. That's how the FDA judges that it worked. But unfortunately, when you get an FDA approval saying you can go from severe movement to no movement, then that's how the companies have to market the product. So they have to say that this is the on-label way to use it. They don't say best real-world use. They say this is the on-label way, and that's how it has to be taught to people who are learning how to inject. And now, because these products are so commoditized, everybody and anybody is injecting. I go by hair salons and there's people injecting in hair salons. Like, it's crazy. Everywhere you go, these products are safe when used appropriately, but I'm not worried about safety necessarily. I don't want to walk around with no movement or one brow off from another. So that's part of the problem, is that a level of expectation is that I got my money's worth, or I got the best effect if I can't move. But actually, the best effect is, for me, when I look at somebody after doing a treatment, is one, what do they look like at rest? So if you see somebody that can't move their forehead at all, at rest, I promise you, their brows are going to be lower and flatter, and they're going to look older, and their forehead will look waxy smooth. That to me is a bad outcome. Then when they try to raise their brows, one of two things will happen. One is they can't, which to me is horrifying. And two, which I think is also a big problem, is that any little bit of that muscle fiber that's not knocked out is going to hyper move, because it's the only part of the muscle that can move, because this is a really big muscle. So then you're going to see a line right there, or a Spock look, because they've dropped here and they've raised there. The last point is about doing these products, is that as we age and as we go through peri and post-menopause, is our anatomy changes. And the forehead muscle, which is this massive muscle in the forehead, and the only muscle that raises the brows, it slides down a bit. So when they do the injection here, if they're too high up, they're hitting the lower forehead muscle, which is going to drop you immediately. It's going to drop you down here. And then you're naturally going to pull up here. And you see these women walking around thinking they got a brow raise, but meanwhile, they've dropped here and they've raised here. And this is not a good look, right? You want to have a natural arch, or your natural arch, or a little bit of a lift. So it is very technical, especially as you get older. And I don't believe in preventative Botox or preventative neuromodulators. You can be pathologic in the movement. So somebody who sits there at rest and they're always doing this, they need it to retrain them not to do that. And I always teach them an exercise, which I'll show you, to help them not do that. But the idea is not to do it when someone's not making that movement, because you're going to atrophy or shrink a muscle when you do that. And the idea is, if a muscle is overused, you do want to reduce that movement a little bit because you're overusing it, but you want to balance that with a redirection. So I don't say don't frown, I say lift the ears. And if I know I don't mean to be going up and I want you to ask questions, but I get so excited about this.
I'm curious,
yeah. When you raise your brows, that's not an expression, that's a function. When you look at somebody at rest, they're just listening, they're naturally rested, right? Their brows are usually at rest in their resting position. As soon as they start to listen or talk, they go like this to look animated, to look engaged, to show that they're engaging. So they do this to say, yes, I'm talking, I'm listening, I'm engaging. But that's not an expression, it's a function to engage yourself and force that animation. And sometimes it's because you feel it and you want to express it. And sometimes it's because you don't feel it and you're trying to feel it and show the other person, yes, I'm feeling, like a fake laugh, almost like, it's so funny, but we're not really laughing, but maybe it'll make us want to laugh if we start the giggle. So that expression is to open the eyes, to show engagement and animation. And that's why when you take it away, you're less trustworthy. But you can have that same effect without moving your forehead, and you can teach yourself how to do it. And that's by lifting your ears. Now think of when you talk to a dog, what do? They
Ears
pull
go
their
up.
ears back, right? So I see when I talk to people and they smile big, their ears go back. So I started doing that. So I don't know if you can see it, but I'm going to make two faces. I did this on stage, but it's harder to see if you're far away. Maybe you could see it if I'm a little bit closer. So this is one face. Did you see it?
Mm-hmm. Your ears went up a little bit.
Yeah. My
I
ears
have
went
a
up,
friend
but
that could do that, but I have so much trouble doing that.
see?
Oh, how
So
do you
when I do, see how much they went up?
I had a friend that she used to say she could wiggle her ears, and
Yeah.
I never could do it.
how do you do that? How do you move?
So the first thing to do is to get yourself to make the room really, really quiet. So you can't do it now because we're we're so tense because we're animated. We're using a lot of facial expressions. Like I never Botox my forehead, right? So I can fully move my forehead. People go, no, you can't. I'm like, yeah, I can. I can fully move it. But what I do is instead I lift this back. So this is a much better look, and it gives me that same feeling and gives you the same sense that I'm engaged even more than if I raise my brows, because this is really authentic. This takes work. So the way you do it is you take a slow, deep breath, hold it, and then slowly breathe out. And as you breathe out, you really work to feel every muscle relax. You do this a few times. You really want to get your face, your jaw, your eyes, your mouth, your neck into a full state of relaxation. Then you think of something that makes you super, super happy, and you try to go into that big, authentic smile. And you'll feel these muscles that are in your lateral face, even to your scalp over time, pull back. And the idea is to be able to identify those muscles. Once you figure out what you just did, because people do it without trying all the time. I see them do it when I'm in the room with them, and they're moving their ears all the time. They're just not aware of those muscles. So just like you can be aware of these muscles, you can be aware of these muscles. The difference is that this is not a function. This is a pure expression. So when somebody does this, they're not doing it to see, they're not doing it to show engagement, they're just making a face. And if you can't make that face, nothing happens. There's no reason to make that face. You can, if I wanted to show you I'm angry, I could do that without frowning at you, right? I have body language, lots of ways to show it or to emote that way. But this is a lazy expression. I always tell people when they go, oh, I'm so expressive. I go, no, you're lazy. You're making one face for every expression. It's like, that's not expressive. That's one face. So some people just naturally do that because they think they're showing concern, or they're showing, I don't know, whatever they think they're showing, but they're not. This is a negative expression. There's no reason to make that face. So I want to reduce it, and at the same time, teach a different expression, because the laws of physics say you can only go in one direction at a time. And if you're going this way, you can't be going this way. Even if you're thinking this, you're not doing this. So that's the goal, is to help redirect movement and then teach people what they're doing to help them do it differently. And it took me a year, and I've been doing it for 20 years. It's not just overnight, but now as I sit here, I'm doing that. And what it's conveying to you, even subliminally, is that I'm engaged, I'm enthusiastic, I'm happy to be here, I'm present. And it makes me feel that way, and it makes you get that I'm here.
Wow.
So there
I
are
must
certain
have-
episodes.
Yeah.
I
I'm sorry, I must have furrowed my brow so much when I was younger.
But that we always say there are certain episodes that you need to watch on YouTube. This is an episode you guys are going to need to watch on YouTube to learn that amazing trick, because that's something I can't move my ears, but now I'm going to practice. And as soon as
And
I
it's
can,
free.
again, another bonus. So, and another reason why you guys should definitely be following Dr. Doris on Instagram, because the information that you share is amazing. It's just so invaluable. And one of the things you're talking about now is a series for menopause and perimenopause, which is great because we need this information. And
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you like step one. Okay, someone comes in, they're in perimenopause, and as you say, they say, my face is falling apart. What does that mean? What is that? Because I know for me, it's dryness, lack of collagen. What does your face is falling apart mean?
It's exactly that. It's that once you hit perimenopause, we already know collagen production starts declining as early as in your 30s. And then we're just hoping to repair what we can and maintain what we have. But once you hit perimenopause and then postmenopause, I mean, you lose 30% of your collagen in the first 5 years postmenopause. And the decline starts happening peri, it's just more rapid at postmenopause. So the best way to prevent collagen decline is estrogen. And I have a radio show on Sirius XM, and I had a colleague on who does a lot of hormone replacement, and he said something so interesting. He said that estrogen, and I never thought of it in this simple way, but it's true. Estrogen is not a carcinogen. estrogen is a hormone that you really do need. Your brain has estrogen receptors, your skin has estrogen receptors, your joints do. So you need it for lots of things. And when you go through perimenopause and that estrogen starts to decline, your oil glands start to make less oil. And the further you go away from your face, the less you have anyway. So you really feel it in your legs first. And then it's when women start coming in their 50s or 40s and they start noticing crepey skin on their arms or above their knee. So it's not just the face that they start to complain about, it's the neck and the chest and the other body parts that they've had chronic sun exposure that now all of a sudden, I think of that Bounty paper towel commercial where they're holding the Bounty paper towel underwater and it's holding, and then it just falls apart. It's kind of like what your skin is doing. It's taking in all these insults of like stress and pollution and UV exposure and diet changes, and then hormone loss or depletion. And then all of a sudden one day it hits that tipping point and you see the difference. One thing I've noticed is that the area around the mouth is a continuation of the neck in terms of how it ages. So I look at women and this part of their face that goes from the sides of the nose to the corners of the mouth and the chin it ages about 10 to 20 years faster than the midface and the cheeks. So the skin quality is completely different. And then the eyes are also the thinnest skin, and that doesn't age very well in a lot of people. But it's really, I tell women in the summer, get a sunscreen stick to put on the upper lip because you're going to sweat that off in an hour. And people don't reapply their sunscreen. Actually, my Saturday post was if you didn't reapply it, it's like you didn't apply it at all. And people were complaining, saying, no, it's better than nothing. And actually, it's really not better than nothing. It's actually probably worse. Because what happens is people put on sunscreen first thing in the morning, and then they don't even use enough. And then they go, well, I put sunscreen on. I am now exonerated from anything that happens to my skin hereafter. And they'll go and spend the whole day out in the sun with this false sense of security that they have some sun protection. And they fry, they burn their skin, they age their skin. And if they didn't use sunscreen, they might not feel that protected. And they might either apply it later when it really matters, or they might go inside or not spend as much time outdoors or do other things to protect their skin. So sunscreen really does have to be reapplied because even if it's long lasting sunscreen, you literally wear it off as you're out and about.
And is that usually, I've always heard if you get in the water, you get out, reapply. And is it every hour or every 2 hours? I couldn't quite remember.
Yeah, well, it depends. So there's no such thing as waterproof. There's water resistant and very water resistant. So I think it goes like 60 minutes and 90 minutes is the amount of time that the saying goes by. But it also depends what you're doing, how much you applied. And the way that I apply sunscreen is I always do the neck first before I get dressed. And I always go in an upward direction to make sure I get the bottom of the neck. Then I do the full face, then I do it again. So I always do a double application first thing in the morning to make sure I get good coverage. And then when I'm out and about, if I have makeup, I'll use a powder SPF. Otherwise, I'll just keep reapplying the sunscreen every hour or so, just because I really just don't want the breakdown of collagen. And people talk about vitamin D or about how important the sun is. If you feel like you have to get sun, just look at the UV index. And if it's at 2 or below, then it's fine. In my view, you don't need to worry about sunscreen. And probably it's fine. It's actually probably a little bit good to be out. Like first thing in the morning as the sun is coming up to get a little sun, sets your circadian rhythm. I mean, I think the sun is amazing. I'm in the sun all the time. I walk to and from work every day. It's 2.5 miles. But I'm just smart about it. But I think being outdoors, being in the sun, I'm never saying don't do that. I'm just saying be smart about it.
Do you have any recommendations for sunscreens? Some of the best ones?
Oh yeah, there's so many great ones. I mean, I think La Roche-Posay is probably one of the best brands out there. They have pure mineral ones. They have ones that are absorbed and not absorbed. I don't call them chemical because everything's a chemical, but there's ones that are absorbed, like the Helio. Well, let's see, they have the Antelios. The Helioplex is the Neutrogena one. That's also good, but they all have mineral-based ones as well. And now the mineral ones come with natural tints to them that go across a broad range of skin tones. And so Neutrogena, I think for children, I like Blue Lizard. That's a nice brand. And what else do I like? Supergoop seems popular with a lot of people that, you know, if you like it and you'll use it, I'm happy. When I go to Europe, I do buy sunscreens there because they have a lot of UV filters that we don't have here. So unfortunately, in the US, well, fortunately or unfortunately, the sunscreen ingredients are FDA drugs. So in order to get something that you can label as a sunscreen, you have to go through the FDA and show all the safety data. So we haven't had a new sunscreen ingredient, I think, in 20 years in the US. But in Europe, they're only regulated as cosmetics. And the reason why they don't come here is because they don't have the safety data that the FDA requires. And so for all the people, you know, and all these advocacy groups who complain about our sunscreens, these are ones that the FDA allows. And to get those studies, to get that data, you have to prove a good amount of safety. So I'm okay with the sunscreens we have until the FDA, you know, says otherwise. But so far, the FDA has asked for more information on some of the absorbed ones, but hasn't taken anything off the market. So I don't believe sunscreens cause cancer. I believe that skin cancer is increasing. We have 2 people dying in this country every hour of skin cancer, something to take very seriously, plus skin aging. And sunscreen is our best defense. But the UV filters in Europe go to some levels of blue light and visible light even. So they have broader protection than we do here. They just don't have the safety data. So if you believe that they're okay, then when you go to Europe, buy sunscreen.
Wow, I was just there and I didn't
And
buy any
Isden is a
sunscreen there.
good brand. Yeah,
Oh.
Isden is a good brand. Alastin has a good sunscreen that people really like in terms of the tone. Who else? There's just so many, but I really think that the drugstore brands, La Roche-Posay and Neutrogena are probably my 2 favorites. Aven has a really nice one for more sensitive skin. Aveeno, like all the simple brands in the drugstore, I usually stick to the big names because their money goes into research and development, not into packaging and marketing, because they're just such big companies. And actually, I've been to all their labs, met with their PhDs, and they're really quite serious scientists looking for the best ways to bring products that are safe and effective to the market at accessible prices. So I really respect that.
What about the sprays? What do you feel about the spray?
I like the sprays. I think they're fine, but it depends. So there's a continuous spray and there's a mist. So if you have a continuous spray, that means that when you're spraying, you're getting continuous product coming out. In a mist, you're only getting a misting of it. So you're not getting the same coverage. So you have to mix that in. And I would rather do it outdoors because I don't want you inhaling the sunscreen. And I don't like it for the face. I would spray it on your hands and then wipe it on your face. So if you're doing the back or areas away from the face or outdoors where you're not going to inhale it, I don't think inhaling sunscreen is a good idea. And I think it's hard to not inhale it. And then of course there's the way that it comes out of the bottle. If it's aerosol, there's problems with aerosol. So but if it's like my kids will use a spray, so I'm going to get a spray. They'll use it. That's always what we run out of first on vacation is the spray.
Oh yeah, we go right.
Exactly.
That's what my husband uses. That's what he had a skin cancer thing taken off his arm. So it really, you know, it is really concerning.
But some of them should still be rubbed in.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I feel like my face and my chest, I do a rub-in thing. So.
No, but even a spray should be rubbed in sometimes.
Oh, rubbed in. I see
Yeah.
what you mean. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay.
Can we go back to collagen? Because this is like, because it's all kind of interconnected
Yeah.
for your body. If you're not on estrogen, how can you get like, you know, people drink collagen protein powders, and does
Yeah.
any of that really work?
I think so. I remember having a conversation. I made a show with a couple of friends called The Gist. It was like the Dermatologist. We were the Gist 5. So it was, and I started talking about collagen supplements, and they were all like, "No, this is horrible, bad for your kidneys. It doesn't do anything. There's no data." But the reality is that any supplement is going to be a little tricky because it's not an FDA product. They're not going to do FDA trials. You're never going to have the amount of data you want that's going to say definitively that it does anything. But the way I look at it is, one, it's a protein. That's not bad. You're getting protein, so that's fine. And the second is that enough of the companies made enough of a at least theoretical set of information that made me believe I could see how it could work, and it makes sense to me. So this is the problem. And if you think about cholesterol, we're all saying don't eat foods high in cholesterol because your cholesterol will go up. When in reality, cholesterol is a massive molecule. You don't eat it, it doesn't go through and stay as cholesterol, right? It gets digested. Same with collagen. Of course, when you eat collagen, they're all saying, well, you're not going to get collagen if you eat collagen because it's going to get metabolized and broken down. But what I've seen is that if you have good hydrolyzed collagen, and I think that the marine source, which is really from fish scales, so if you think about it, it's sustainability, right? You're not killing anything to get it. If you're vegan, it's a problem, I guess. But if you can get yourself past that, it's fish scales. And so now you're using all the fish. That's not bad. And when it gets broken down into basic building blocks of collagen, which is the step ahead towards collagen production. And there is some good data for joints that it has shown some benefit that seemed like it was from the product. Again, it's not a placebo-controlled blinded trial with enough people to really show that much, but if you have normal functioning kidneys, you don't overdo it, you're getting a protein and you may be helping your skin. And I think that there's enough, at least theoretical data, to make me think that it's safe when done properly, doesn't do harm, and could benefit, that I'm on board with it. So the 3 brands that I've seen that I think have the best data and the best science behind them and are the most serious, I think Skin Aid was the first, that's Skin ADE. And then the second was Liquid Biocell. And the third is Nutrafol. And they're all either drinkable or they're powders. I don't like the gummies or the pills because that's too dense a protein. You should have it in a liquid. So ultimately, it either comes already liquefied or it's a powder that's going to go in a smoothie or something else. And certainly follow the directions on the bottle and give it time. And it's one thing. It's not, no one thing is going to replace your need for sunscreen or otherwise good, healthy habits. It's just one more thing. But so I do it because I don't see why not. By the time they figure out yes or no, or let's say, oh yeah, they figured out it's the greatest thing ever, I'll be 90 and be like, I don't want to wait till 90. So I looked, so that, you know what, I realized there's 2 different things. There's evidence-based medicine where you do the clinical trials and you have the placebo controlled with enough people and they're well done. But that's always going to be driven by big pharma, right? Somebody who has big money to make is going to do those big trials. But these companies are never that. So I think there's evidence-based medicine, and then there's something else called evidence-informed medicine, where you may not have the big trial with all the evidence, but there's something to clinical experience that says, in my experience, looking at the data, studying and analyzing with the history of everything I've done over the past 25 years, this is why this makes sense. That to me also has value. And that's what I'm going with here.
You were talking about this, and then also when I'm getting back to skincare. So I'm someone that grew up in the sun in the 70s, 60s and 70s and 80s. And I think the first time I ever even heard of sunscreen was like 1982. And so I was out in the sun. I was on a swim team, exposed. What can we do about damage that has already occurred?
That's such a great question. Well, one is if you're a good candidate for hormone replacement, then that's one thing that does help. I'll just say one quick thing and I'll go back to this about hormone replacement. I know not everyone's a good candidate for it because some people have had breast cancer and whether or not it's estrogen receptor positive, and they just cannot do it. But my concern is that too many women will not do it because doctors won't prescribe it for them because it's easier not to than to have the discussion. And so part of why I drive this conversation so hard is because it's so important, and so many women are given bad data or just discouraged, or they're just afraid because breast cancer, but the benefits outweigh the risk for most people, and too many people who would benefit are just not given enough information. So I drive it there. But So that aside now, just putting out there that it's good for most people, but if you can't, then here's the other thing, or if you can, but here's other things you can do as well. One is retinol. I think retinol is really important because retinol is what's called an abundance mimetic, meaning that retinol makes your skin think that it has everything under control. So now we can do housekeeping, we can build collagen, we can repair, we can help even out skin tone, do all these great things. But my worry about retinol and chronic use is that my dad used to have a saying that, I don't know if it was his or not, but he said, toujours plaisir n'est pas plaisir. Always pleasure is not pleasure. So an abundance mimetic may be good sometimes, but what happens when you have overabundance? You get chaos. So I've started to pulse my retinols a little bit, and I don't know what the pulsing is, but my informed evidence decision is to pulse it 5 days a week. So I tell my patients to use a retinol 5 days a week. But is it a month on, a month off? Don't know. We have to sort of figure this out. But I think that's where we're getting with retinol, is figuring out how to pulse it. And I'm hopeful that we'll come to some data that we can say makes sense of how it should be pulsed. But retinol is one. Things like vitamin C are another. And just to understand and to put out there that I heard everything you said about past sun exposure, but it's never too late to start. So people will come in and go, oh, well, I've had all this sun exposure. It's like my lifetime sun exposure is done. It doesn't matter what I do now, but it does matter. So whatever you do from this day forward is what you have. So one is get into a good sun protection routine. Two is add retinol at night, vitamin C in the morning, peptides, exosomes, I think have come a very long way. Lasers really do help stimulate collagen. They don't thin your skin, they actually thicken your skin. Retinol doesn't thin your skin, it thickens your skin. It makes the collagen layer thicker. So people have a misconception about retinol and thinning the skin, and lasers and thinning your skin, but neither of them do that. Retinol makes the outer layer sit more compact, which is the stratum corneum, which is why your skin looks smoother. But so that's flattening it, but it makes the collagen layer thicker. So all together, your skin is thicker and more and firmer and more resilient. So lasers can help. I love SoftWave. SoftWave is a lifting device that actually helps build collagen as well. It doesn't melt fat. It doesn't affect nerves. And I actually think that's a better preventative for young people than a neuromodulator would be. And when you're younger, you'll do it once a year. As you get older, you might do it a few times, and then maintenance every 10 months or so.
And that's
and
external.
Chemical peels.
That's external, so that's not.
Yeah, SoftWave is external and has no downtime. So it's on the skin, and you could do it in the summer even. Doesn't even matter. So that's a nice treatment that I've been happy with. I've had 4 or 5 of them myself, so it just keeps everything up. And helps with evening out the brows. There's a lot you can do with it. It's uncomfortable, but you know, as women, we know beauty is pain. Pain is beauty. Just give me results. Hurt me, but give me results. And then other topical things, I think even just a simple good moisturizer is really helpful. Things with hyaluronic acid that are going to help the natural hyaluronic acid in your skin is really helpful. Hyaluronic acid fillers done very carefully. And that's another area where, I mean, I've had fillers, I've had all this stuff. Maybe you could tell, maybe you can't, but it's the idea for me is not to get rid of every line and wrinkle. I give a whole lecture called Don't Chase the Lines, Treat the Source. And the idea is to not be offended by a line, but to understand it. So what I've seen is that people who grind their teeth, their masseters get overgrown. So this muscle that's here that's used for chewing, it's called a masseter because you use it for mastication, for chewing. So you have it here and you have it here. So when this muscle overgrows, then your face gets shorter because this muscle will now be the end of your face instead of at your chin or your jawline. So when you smile, instead of going all the energy going across the whole face, it stops where that muscle starts because it's like a wall. So it pushes forward from there and back from here, and then you get this line that comes down here. So when people have this line behind the marionette line, this line that comes down, Usually it's because they're grinding. So if I can relax that grinding and then put a little bit of filler behind it to extend the jaw, that line will go away without putting anything in it. The marionette lines are also not from loss here, it's from loss behind and under. So if I put the filler along the jawline under and behind and a little bit up, I've already made that line better without putting anything in it. So, but the mistake people make is they say, I see a line, I'm gonna fill the line, and then you look like you have a ball there. The line is gone, but you look better. Not usually. So then you have ligaments, and we're starting to pay more attention to the ligament. So you have a ligament that comes down the side called the lateral retaining ligament. If you fill with a filler in front of that line, it's gonna make a big ball. And then you see these people with these big cheeks and it has nowhere to go, so it pushes up. So it makes your eyes smaller from below. If you put it behind, it's going to give you more of a lift or a lifting effect. So you see these people where they get the filler here and then their eye goes up from below. Then they get the Botox from above and their eye drops from above. They have low brows, small squinty eyes, and big cheeks. And we wonder why people start looking unnatural. So it's really understanding anatomy and understanding that you'll never make a 40 or 50-year-old look 20, nor should you, but you cannot, because your bone structure has changed, right? The skeleton shrinks, and the rate limiting factor is always going to be your eyes. Because when this bone that surrounds the eye shrinks, that means the hole gets bigger. And for some people, the eyes will sink in a bit. So if you try to fill, you're going to make the eye further away from the surface, which makes you look older. And if you try to fill underneath, you're going to puff it out more, which again has the same problem. So the eyes are always going to be what limits how much you can put in the face and where you put it. But what we've learned is if you go back into the hairline a little bit, you can sort of start to share the space. My dad, I don't know what he thought I could be when I grew up, but he sent me to stenography class for secretaries and to sewing classes for housewives. So it helped me take great notes in med school, and it also helped me learn to suture and to share energy, because when you sew and you have one side that's longer than another, you have to make them match, right? So you do that by learning to divide the space into smaller and smaller units till you make everything work out. And sort of when I look at the face, it's kind of like that. I go, what's happening and where can I put a product so that you don't see the product, but it can share the energy to give you the effect of a lift or a smoothing? And when is it that I can't do that anymore? So I do it with a combination of fillers, neuromodulators, devices, and skincare. And that combination is never meant to replace a facelift or look like a facelift. It's meant to look authentic, natural, mobile, and beautiful for any age. But at some point, if there's way too much laxity, usually in the neck, then at that point, if it bothers them enough, then it's, a facelift.
And
But
this is
I
why
never want to have a facelift. I'd rather get old.
you look amazing. There's just no reason why you would even need one. But this information you're giving us is why it's so important that women just not walk into a nail salon and ask for Botox or filler, or because there's so much information that you need to have in order to do this correctly. So you do look the best that you want to look, not necessarily, like you said, younger, because that's just not part of the growing.
But more youthful, right? So I separated out between younger and more youthful. And I think there is a difference between that. Looking younger is where I see people getting into trouble, because they think if they get rid of all their lines, they're going to look younger, then they can compete in whatever world they're, whether it's the job market, dating field, or whatever. But the reality is, if you look more youthful, it's a good thing. There's something to the thinking fast and slow kind of idea. Instinctually, we think of younger people as being fertile. We can't help it. It's hardwired into our DNA. We're a species that if we want to survive, we have to propagate. So we're going to be turned on by certain features that imply fertility: a full head of hair, a certain curve of the back, certain youthful features that we see as like actually fertility is like the best for having and carrying a baby. But we don't think of that in a overt way. It's just our instinct is to see that. as we get older and we're not fertile, what happens is we become invisible to people looking for that, but become more beautiful to people who get over that. So your instinct will be to look in the mirror and go, oh, I have these lines, I'm showing signs of aging. But okay, that's your instinct, but we're evolved. So we can get over that and go, ah, but I have a life I've lived, I've accomplished, I've survived all of my bad days, and I'm still here happy today. So all of those things are really, really important. You can have health and energy and be productive and contribute and do all those things at peri and post menopause. If you do things to support that, right? Like the stuff we're talking about, which also goes to nutrition and exercise and sleep and sex and all those things that are great for your skin. I mean, there's data now that shows that both aerobic and resistance exercise is directly impacting your skin health. So it's one more reason to get out there and do some strength training and get on your bike or walk or run or do whatever. Maybe not run too far because then you get running face, but to do your exercise.
What's running face? I used to run. What's running face? I don't run
People
anymore.
who run a lot, you can see their face. It does show. All that pounding isn't great for your face. So run like 5 miles, not 25 miles. You know,
I used to. I don't run anymore, but
it gets better when you
years
stop.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and you're
I
okay,
ran my last
Bridget.
marathon 20 years ago. So yeah.
Can we
I think
ask?
there is a
Yeah.
beauty that comes with age that's not
So true.
replicable in a younger person, and I think it's more beautiful. Older is
And
better.
exactly. Oh, I love that. Older's better. I love
It's
that.
better.
I wanted to just follow up on the retinol. Does it have to be prescribed retinol, or there's so
No.
many over the counters now that have retinol added?
Yeah, I almost never use a prescription retinol for anti-aging. And for two reasons. One is you don't need it because we have so many molecules that are not prescription that work as well for the wrinkle component of it. And also when you're a prescription product, if you want to change the formula in any way, you have to do a whole new FDA trial. Whereas in an over-the-counter formula, you can add in peptides and growth factors and vitamin C and other supporting ingredients that make the retinol better that you couldn't in a prescription product. So there's a lot that you can do with retinols that are over the counter, but they're not all the same. And you can't go by the percentage of retinol, like a 0.1 of one retinol versus another. It doesn't mean anything. It's the formulation that matters.
That's one thing I really like about your Instagram page, that you will put products up there
Oh, yeah.
that are all kinds of price ranges that someone could get at the drugstore or someone could get a really high end one. And I think we hear from a lot of people that I just don't have the money to pay for a really expensive product, and so
you don't have to. Another great brand is Laneige. It's at Target. It's an Amore Pacific line, and it's their Target brand, and I love those products. So there's so many great brands out there, but again, these are the big name brands over the small kitchen ones because they really do have the quality control.
Right.
One of the questions we got asked by a listener is that they have acne now showing up that they never had before. And then to the opposite end, the dryness that they've never experienced. Can you talk about both ends of that spectrum?
Well, one is that I'm not sure that it's acne, right? It could be rosacea, and acne and rosacea can look alike because rosacea can have pimples. So one is I would see a dermatologist to make sure it is what you think it is. And two, hormone fluctuations can cause you to break out, whether it's with acne or rosacea. And when people come in and I tell them they have rosacea, they go, but I didn't have this before. I'm like, okay, well, some things you don't have before, some things you grow into, and some things you grow out of. But rosacea is unfortunately one of those things you grow into. And also, you didn't have it before, probably because you weren't drinking alcohol and you weren't stressing the same way. So rosacea is triggered by environmental things. And one of the big differences between acne and rosacea is acne is more bacterial driven and rosacea is not. So actually, the book I just wrote, my most recent book is called Rebooting the Biome, and it's about the skin biome, the microbes that live in the skin, which are really bugs. And when those bugs get off kilter, then you have overgrowth of ones that are bad or strains of of ones that, well, actually, in the book, we make a point of saying that bugs are neither good, bacteria are neither good nor bad. It's the environment they're in that can make them behave badly. So when you have a good biome balance, then they tend to behave less pathologically, and you tend to have better strains because they keep each other in check. And it's really changed the way I practice medicine, because I use almost no antibiotics anymore. I really work on balancing the skin biome as much as I can, whether it's with topical probiotics that are designed for the skin, or if it's with ingredients like salicylic acid that are more biome friendly. But if you think about rosacea, there's a mite theory of rosacea where Demodex mites overgrow. And when you go through perimenopause, your estrogen, you have a lot of estrogen receptors in your skin of your face. Actually, it's one of the areas of your body you have the highest level of estrogen receptors. And so when you start to get estrogen depleted, that affects your skin biome. It loses some of its diversity. And then you can have overgrowth of other things like mites that can trigger rosacea. So balancing your skin biome becomes really important. Some of that's through looking at the gut, some of it's through looking at the skin, or a combination of those.
And what about the dry skin? Is it the same that
Yeah, it's
you've
the
got to
same
check?
because your oil producing glands are driven also by some of that estrogen. So your oil producing glands become less productive, and they make ingredients that are food for the microbes. So now these microbes don't have their normal food supply, and some do better with that than others. So yeah, you're losing the nutrition for those microbes, and and also your oil glands, or the oil glands in your face make something called natural moisturizing factor, and you're losing all of that. So you're going to get drier. And it is kind of an insult that you're getting wrinkles, pimples, and dry skin all at once. Like, that's just morally wrong. I mean, it makes no sense.
It is
So true.
Yeah, it is. There's so much that I know we don't have time to touch on, that I know that, hair loss. Well, you're getting hair on your face where you don't want it, and then hair loss is happening on your scalp as well. And I know that, can you, I don't know if you have, I'm looking at the time,
I want to
just
make
real quick little talk about, what you can do about that.
Yeah, so hair loss, so hair does naturally age. Your hair on your head, the scalp, gets naturally thinner, each strand changes, and hair that's curly can become frizzy or straighter. Your hair texture changes, the density changes, even if you have no genetic female hair pattern of hair loss. Then you add on top of it that plus genetic hair loss, which is a female pattern where you tend to maintain the frontal hairline and kind of lose right behind it. Men just lose in the temples, and then they lose in the crown, and then they lose all of it. We kind of keep this and lose behind it. But women do thin out in the temples too, and it really offends all women. So minoxidil at 5% once a day is the only FDA-approved treatment for female hair loss. But there's a lot of other things. PRP can help, which is where we take your blood, spin it down, add it back. And the reason why you get the hair growth on your face is, again, the hormonal imbalance. Your estrogen to testosterone balances off, and the hair starts growing. And to get rid of that, if the hair is black, then and you have a lot of it, laser hair removal is great, although you have to do it for longer because it's so hormonally driven that it's not just a few times and you're done. Don't do it if you have a tan. Make sure a doctor sees you before anybody else does it for you, so you know that you're a good candidate for it. And the hair should be present but short. If you're going to do electrolysis, that also helps if you don't have too many hairs. Make sure you have somebody good who does that. Waxing can help, plucking, dermaplaning, shaving it doesn't make it grow back thicker, it just makes it grow back. So those are all things you could do. And PRP is good. Topical exosomes. Actually just helped co-found a new company, and we're working on a novel molecule for skin and hair. We're going to have both over-the-counter and prescription products. So the first product should be out in about a year and a half. It gives me, I used to work in a research lab, and I'm a little bit of a lab rat wannabe because I love the lab side of it and developing products, but there's a lot coming for skin and hair to help with skin longevity that are novel molecules. So I'm one of many coming up with things, but I think it's going to be, I mean, I'm doing it, so I think it's going to be revolutionary, but it's really very, very exciting. So it's a good time to be getting older, because we're taking the aging process to a new level. We're looking at rejuvenating the immune system and sort of trying to help us in a more holistic way rather than just appearance. And it's working. We're figuring it out. It's been decades of it, but we're getting there. It's really truly so exciting.
Well, I know you have a skincare line, which I'm about ready after this conversation, even after the conversation we had at the event, to go purchase. So everybody can check that out too on your website. But
Yes.
first and foremost, I would tell people to please follow you on Instagram. There's so much information out there, and women have questions. They email us all the time with these questions, and I'm like, follow this person, check out that, and so again, you have two books. The most recent one is Rebooting the Biome, and then you have Beyond Beautiful as well. And we thank you. Like Bridget said, we could talk to you all day, but we know you have patients to see.
I do.
So we thank you so much. We hope you come back and talk about this new exciting and products that are going to be coming out. And thank you for everything you're doing for women in our demographic. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This was so much fun.
Oh,
I know I
thank
went
you.
on and on, but I love talking to you, and it's just been great. Thank you for having me.
Oh,
Oh,
it
thank
was
you.
great.